It was an ordinary afternoon, but for Isabella, the only daughter of a millionaire, this would be a radical change. Growing up amid luxury and excess, she had never known what it truly meant to work hard. Her father, a very successful businessman, felt it was time to teach her an important lesson about humility. In a decision that would shock many, he forced her to accept a simple, yet fundamental job, working as a waitress in a modest restaurant. It was an opportunity for Isabella to experience life without the comforts that wealth provides. Isabella, of course, didn't understand what her father intended. To her, the idea of working as a waitress in a simple restaurant seemed unnecessary, even humiliating. After all, she had always had everything she wanted, from designer clothes to international trips. But her father was determined. He knew that true wealth was not in money, but in life experience. And so, with a subtle smile and a firm look, he left her to face her new challenge. Entering the restaurant for the first time, Isabella quickly realized how her privileged life had left her lacking in practical skills. The mess in the kitchen, the impatient customers, and the constant pressure made her uncomfortable. Her movements were clumsy, and she felt like a stranger in her own body. With every new order, her discomfort grew. But her father knew that this process was necessary for her to understand the value of hard work, patience, and humility. In the first few days, Isabella resisted, complained, and tried to convince herself that she was being treated unfairly. She couldn't imagine herself in such a place, so far from her comfort zone. And that, in itself, was a great lesson. The fact that she had everything at her fingertips without ever having to strive for anything was a reflection of how distorted her worldview was. Her father, however, knew it wouldn't be easy, but that this experience would make her grow in ways she couldn't yet imagine. With each new day at the restaurant, Isabella began to confront the reality of how people live outside her luxury bubble. She saw with her own eyes the effort of everyone there, from the cook to the cashier. The humility of those around her challenged her to reflect on what truly mattered in life. Although reluctant at first, something inside her began to change. What had seemed like a punishment now appeared to be, in fact, the opportunity for a new perspective on the world. In light of this scenario, the lesson was clear: true wealth is not just in what you have, but in the lessons you learn throughout life. Over time, Isabella began to understand what it truly meant to work toward her goals. She started to realize that the value of effort and dedication were not concepts exclusive to the rich, but something accessible to everyone, regardless of their social standing. As Isabella adapted to her new reality, one question lingered in the air: how would she cope with the challenges ahead, and perhaps even transform that simple restaurant into something bigger and better? But that was something only time would tell. Isabella wasn't prepared for the challenges that arose in the first few days. The exhausting work, the long shifts, and the constant pressure to serve customers left her drained. Her body, accustomed to comfort and laziness, now had to adapt to a completely different rhythm. At first, her legs trembled, her hands sweated, and the feeling of being in an unfamiliar place heightened her insecurity. It was clear that, in addition to the physical challenges, the emotional ones were even more intense. The hardest part for Isabella was dealing with the stares of others. Her co-workers, simple and humble people, couldn't understand why she was there. To them, the young woman was just a spoiled girl who probably wouldn't have the courage to stick it out. And, no matter how much she tried to hide it, Isabella knew she was being watched closely. The emotional discomfort of feeling out of place made her want to give up at every moment, but she knew deep down that she couldn't turn back. It was time to face the challenges, no matter how tough they were. With each new day, Isabella tried to hide her shame and frustration. When an order was wrong, she felt a wave of heat wash over her face, as if everyone was waiting for her to fail. On top of that, the physical work left her exhausted in a way she had never experienced. Her hands, once delicate and well cared for, were now marked by the effort. Isabella began to realize how much hard work truly demanded from a person, and this made her start rethinking her life. What challenged her the most, however, wasn't so much the physical work, but the internal struggle. The idea of wasting her time in a simple restaurant, far from the luxury life she was used to, made her question her father's decision. She felt like she was being forced to abandon everything she knew. But deep down, something inside her knew that true growth wouldn't come from comfort, but from the pain of letting go of old certainties and facing the unknown head-on. In moments of great despair, she remembered something her father always said: the greatest value you can carry is not in what you have, but in what you're capable of learning. And, as much as she resisted, she began to understand what he meant. The emotional discomfort of being in an unfamiliar place was actually an opportunity to reinvent herself. Resistance was just the first barrier she needed to overcome to achieve something greater. But even with all the difficulties, Isabella couldn't help but feel, in some way, proud. She was there, strong and firm, facing the adversities and learning the value of every effort, every step she took. The resistance she had talked so much about was beginning to dissipate, and in its place, curiosity was growing. How far could she go with hard work and humility? With each new day, the challenge became clearer. Would she truly be able to adapt and, perhaps, even thrive in this new environment? But that answer, only time would tell. It was an ordinary day at the restaurant when Isabella first crossed paths with Ottavio. He wasn't like the other customers who rushed by, oblivious to what was happening around them. Ottavio was a simple man, with a modest appearance, but there was a sparkle in his eyes that seemed to understand what was going on in Isabella's heart. A mechanic by profession, he lived in the neighborhood and was always willing to help, whether with words or a helping hand. That first conversation would mark a turning point in her journey. Ottavio, with his calm demeanor, knew how to listen without rushing to offer advice. He seemed to fully understand what Isabella was going through. When she, exhausted, questioned her own ability to adapt to the work, he simply smiled and said, "Nothing in life comes without effort. But what you learn, no one can take from you." Those words, spoken so simply, echoed in her mind for days. He didn't have riches or grand properties, but he possessed something far more valuable: wisdom. Soon, the two began talking more frequently during breaks. Ottavio shared stories from his life about how he had reinvented himself over the years, learning from each fall and every difficulty. He didn't have diplomas or important titles, but his experiences were the most valuable. Isabella, who once saw challenges as obstacles, began to see them as opportunities. And slowly, she started to realize that true power lay in resilience and constant learning. In one of their deeper conversations, Ottavio spoke about how a mechanic's job required patience and dedication. It's not about fixing cars, it's about understanding the machine, knowing its details, and taking care of it with respect. Life is the same, he explained. His words began to reverberate in Isabella's mind. She realized that, deep down, what she was learning at the restaurant was very similar to what Ottavio did with cars: identifying problems, understanding how things worked, and, ultimately, finding solutions. And for her, that was a great lesson. Ottavio also taught her the importance of treating people with dignity, regardless of their social class. People, all of them, have something to teach, you just have to know how to listen, he would say. Isabella, who had once seen herself as superior to others, began to understand the depth of those words. She allowed herself to observe more closely the work of those around her and began to admire the dedication and effort of each person. This, without a doubt, was a turning point in her transformation. But what touched her the most was the way Ottavio, with his simple life, was so at peace with himself. He wasn't in a hurry to get anywhere, but he knew he was on the right path. Isabella, in turn, felt that, with him by her side, things were beginning to make more sense. He wasn't just helping at the restaurant, he was helping her find herself. And without realizing it, she began to admire that mechanic more than she could have imagined. Ottavio's presence would become more and more essential in Isabella's journey, like a compass guiding her toward a fuller life. But would she be able to follow his guidance, or would the pressure of the world around her cause her to give up the path she was just beginning to walk? Over the weeks, Isabella began to adapt to the routine of the restaurant, but she also started to notice areas where she could contribute. The environment, although welcoming, lacked some details that could make it more attractive. That's when she started applying the lessons she was learning. Nothing too significant at first, just small suggestions, like reorganizing the space to optimize the flow of service and improving the arrangement of tables. But with each change she implemented, the restaurant began to gain new energy. Soon, Isabella had a simple, yet revolutionary idea, to change the menu to include dishes that, although simple, were more affordable and of good quality. She also suggested a more cozy decor, using elements that would bring a touch of charm to the environment without burdening the budget. The restaurant already had a good clientele, but she knew she could attract more people if she created a more inviting atmosphere. Every detail made a difference, and she was willing to bet on it. The impact of her suggestions was immediate. The number of customers began to increase, and the restaurant became more talked about in the neighborhood. It wasn't just about what she suggested, but also about the way she involved everyone in the process. Isabella's change in attitude was noticeable. She was no longer just a waitress, but someone with a critical and innovative eye, capable of identifying areas for improvement and taking action on them. She felt she was truly contributing to the growth of the restaurant. As she saw the changes happening, Isabella realized that work wasn't just about physical effort, but also about thinking strategically. She began applying the concepts Ottavio had taught her, looking at situations calmly, understanding the problem, and finding practical solutions. The restaurant was no longer just a place where she worked, but a project where she invested her energy and creativity. And that, for her, meant more than any other job she had ever done in her life. Over time, Isabella became a true leader within the restaurant, always seeking ways to improve the customer experience and the team's efficiency. She got to know the suppliers better, negotiated better prices, and observed customers' preferences. Every small improvement she implemented not only helped the restaurant grow, but also fueled her own confidence. She was transforming into someone who could see beyond the obvious, someone who was truly making a difference. Despite the success of her ideas, Isabella never stopped thanking Ottavio for showing her a new perspective on work and the value of simplicity. He, with his wisdom, had been the key to unlocking the potential she didn't know she had. And as the restaurant became busier, Isabella knew she was on a path of transformation, both professionally and personally. But there was still much to learn. Now, with the restaurant thriving, an important question began to arise: how far could Isabella take this transformation? But this chapter of the story was about to take on new dimensions. Over the months, Isabella began to feel more and more integrated into the environment of the restaurant. What once seemed like a hard task now became an opportunity for constant learning. She discovered that, for any business to thrive, more than just brilliant ideas and strategies were necessary. It required teamwork, joint effort, and, above all, respect for the people involved. Every team member, from the cook to the waiter, was a key piece in the restaurant's success. Teamwork, for example, was something Isabella initially didn't understand so deeply. Accustomed to being the leader in everything she did, she thought that her vision was enough for things to happen. But in the restaurant, she quickly learned that no one could do everything alone. The synchronicity between colleagues, mutual collaboration, and collective effort made the difference between a chaotic day and a successful service. Isabella began to realize that success wasn't just in her ideas, but in how she managed to involve others and get everyone to work in harmony. One of the most powerful lessons was understanding that personal effort and dedication were intertwined with the ability to listen and learn from others. If before she believed she could do everything alone, now Isabella knew that growth was only possible when everyone was aligned. She began to encourage others to dedicate themselves more, to work genuinely, and, most importantly, to respect each other. The atmosphere at the restaurant became lighter, more collaborative, and everyone's energy reflected in the results. Respect for others, something that always seemed natural to her in her life of luxury, now took on a different form. Isabella began to understand that it wasn't about giving charity or just showing sympathy. True respect was recognizing the dignity of each person, regardless of their profession or social status. When she started seeing each team member as part of an essential mechanism, her view of work completely changed. She learned to value the effort of each person, from the waiter running between tables to the cashier who handled the register all day. Isabella also began to realize that, by respecting and supporting others, she was also respecting herself. The simple act of helping and listening to others made her realize how much she could learn, even from people who, at first glance, seemed very different from her. She became more humble, more attentive to others, and this helped her grow not only as a professional but as a human being. She was finally understanding the true meaning of teamwork. More than just collaborating, it was about sharing responsibilities and recognizing the value of each contribution. The experience at the restaurant, therefore, wasn't just about optimizing processes or increasing profits. For Isabella, it was a true school of values. She learned that true wealth isn't just in money, but in the ability to form genuine human connections and make a difference in the lives of others. What she was living at the restaurant was more than just a job. It was an internal transformation that would change her way of seeing the world. Now, with a new perspective on teamwork and shared effort, Isabella wondered, what else could she learn from this experience? But one thing was certain, this journey was just beginning. Isabella's transformation did not go unnoticed by anyone, especially her father. When he first saw her at the restaurant, she seemed like a shadow of the person he once knew, proud, full of certainties, and disconnected from the reality of hard work. But as time passed, he began to notice a genuine transformation. She was no longer the same Isabella who complained about the slightest discomfort. Now, she was more mature, more sensitive to the needs of others, more willing to learn. And this, for a millionaire like him, was something rare and valuable. Her father, seeing the effort and dedication Isabella was putting into her work, felt proud. He knew that wealth wasn't about what someone possesses, but about what they are capable of conquering and learning. When Isabella called him to discuss the progress of the restaurant and the results that were starting to show, he realized that the lesson he had given had had an effect in a way he hadn't expected. His daughter wasn't just transforming, but she was also becoming a true leader, someone who could see beyond luxury and comfort. It was at this moment that he decided to take an even more significant step, to support Isabella in a more concrete way. He knew the restaurant could be much more than a simple learning experience for her. It could become the foundation for something truly grand. Decisively, he approached Isabella and, with a calm smile, made a proposal. I want to invest in the restaurant. I believe in its potential. You haven't just changed, you now have a vision that can make a difference. His support, which had seemed so distant from her life until then, was a surprise, but also a confirmation that Isabella's transformation was genuine. Isabella, emotional, accepted the proposal. She knew that the investment was not just financial, but symbolic. It was proof that her father believed in her change and in her ability to transform something simple into something grand. This change in their relationship was a reflection of what Isabella had learned during her journey at the restaurant. She now understood the value of hard work, humility, and perseverance. Her father, once distant and inaccessible, was now by her side, willing to invest not just in a business, but in who she had become. Her father's support was not just an act of generosity, but also a recognition of Isabella's internal transformation. He knew that this lesson in humility and personal effort had been much more than just a test. It had been the key to opening doors in her life. By investing in the restaurant, he was not just supporting the business, but his daughter's journey toward a new perspective on life. This renewed connection between father and daughter not only strengthened their relationship, but also provided Isabella with a unique opportunity to continue pursuing her dream. Now, with her father's financial and emotional support, Isabella felt more prepared than ever to move the restaurant forward. But, at the same time, a new question arose: what would she do with this newfound power her father had given her? The answer, undoubtedly, was yet to come. With her father's support and the experience she had gained at the restaurant, Isabella began to see life in a completely new way. The young woman who once lived in a world of privileges and excesses was now connected to something deeper. She had not only learned how to cope with hard work, but had also rediscovered values that once seemed distant. Purpose, something she had never questioned before, started to become a much clearer part of her life. What had once seemed like just a task to fulfill was now a mission. She felt she was contributing to something greater than just herself. Gratitude, which had once seemed like an abstract concept, was now present in every action Isabella took. She felt grateful for the simple fact that she could work, that she could make a difference in the lives of those around her. Gratitude for the small daily victories, like a satisfied customer or a coworker's smile, began to dominate her thoughts. Every act of kindness, every mutual help in the restaurant, fed a cycle of gratitude and respect that Isabella had never imagined possible. And this, in turn, made her feel richer than ever. Furthermore, Isabella began to establish new authentic connections. Those people she had once felt distant from now became true sources of learning. She understood that she didn't need a life full of influential people to feel fulfilled, but rather genuine individuals willing to share their experiences and lives. Isabella began to connect with everyone at the restaurant, not as the millionaire's daughter, but as a colleague, as a friend. And it was in this simple act of putting herself in others' shoes that she found relationships that transformed her even further. Her journey at the restaurant led her to a place of inner peace she never knew existed. Work was no longer just a means to survive, but a way to express herself, to grow, to live with purpose. The simple act of serving someone's table, listening to a customer, or helping a colleague became much more meaningful. Isabella began to realize that true transformation didn't happen in grand gestures or radical changes, but in the small daily actions that built a life of truth. What had once seemed like a punishment imposed by her father now became the greatest blessing of her life. Isabella understood that true wealth isn't in material possessions, but in the wisdom gained through experience and humility. She had discovered that the secret to a fulfilling life lay in the balance between personal effort, respect for others, and gratitude for what one has. Her father, Ottavio, and all the colleagues at the restaurant were fundamental in this journey of self-discovery and transformation. But now, with confidence in herself and the support of these new connections, Isabella wondered what else she could achieve. She knew she was just beginning to walk a path of authentic success. After all, what did she truly want for her life? And more importantly, how far could she go with everything she had learned so far? So, what have you learned from Isabella's journey? Are you allowing yourself to live experiences that truly transform your view of the world? Sometimes, a big reality check is needed to understand the true value of life, people, and effort. How can you apply these lessons in your daily life? Humility, hard work, and gratitude are more than just words. They are principles that can transform your life in a powerful way. If you're ready to take the next step and change your perspective, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and keep learning how to apply these principles on your own journey.